My name? Well, my street name was Iceblade. My government name doesn't matter anymore. That person died a long time ago on the corners of South Central. What matters is what I became, what I did, and what I survived to tell you today. I wasn't born into this life, nobody really is. The streets of Los Angeles don't give birth to gangsters. They create them, one broken promise, one empty stomach, one dead friend at a time. I was 15 when I first heard about the Crips from my older cousin, Marcus. He'd roll up to our apartment complex in Watts driving cars that cost more than my mama made in 2 years, wearing chains that caught the California sun like diamonds. "Little cuz," he'd say, "you tired of being broke? You tired of watching your mama work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on?" The answer was always yes. The initiation wasn't like what you see in movies. There was no dramatic ceremony, no blood oaths under moonlight. It was brutal, practical, and designed to break you down so they could build you back up as something else. They called it getting jumped in, but that phrase doesn't capture the reality of 6 grown men beating you for 3 straight minutes while you try to stay standing, try to prove you won't run, won't fold. I remember the taste of blood in my mouth, the way my ribs screamed when I tried to breathe, but most of all, I remember the moment it stopped, the silence that followed. Then hands helping me up, voices calling me brother, and the realization that I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. "Welcome to the set, Iceblade," said Big Lock, the shot caller who'd been watching my initiation with cold eyes. He was the one who gave me my name, said I cut through problems clean and cold. No emotion, just results. Now the real education begins. The education was everything they didn't teach you in school, and everything school couldn't prepare you for. How to read the streets, how to spot a setup, how to move weight without drawing heat, how to handle business when talking stopped working. But more than anything, they taught me about the code. The code wasn't written down anywhere. It lived in the minds of the OGs, passed down through violence and necessity. Rule number 1, loyalty above everything. Blood in, blood out. Rule number 2, never cooperate with law enforcement, not even to save your own life. Rule number 3, disrespect gets you disciplined. Betrayal gets you buried. My first job was simple. Stand on the corner and watch. Learn the rhythm of the neighborhood. Memorize faces, understand who belonged and who didn't. South Central had its own language, its own rules, and I was learning to speak fluent street. The corner of Crenshaw and Slauson became my office, my classroom, my second home. I watched crackheads shuffle through like broken ghosts, desperate mothers trying to score for habits they couldn't kick, and young kids who reminded me too much of who I used to be. The money came fast. Hundreds a day, sometimes thousands. More cash than I'd ever seen, but it came with a price that went beyond dollars. 3 months in, I witnessed my first killing. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, broad daylight, cars driving by like nothing was happening. A rival from the Bloods had been spotted in our territory, talking to one of our customers. Big Lock walked up to him, calm as could be, started a conversation about the weather, then pulled out a .38 and put 3 bullets in his chest. No drama, no anger, just business. "Clean this up," he told me, walking away like he'd just finished buying groceries. That's when I learned the most important lesson of all. In the Crips, emotion was weakness. Hesitation was death. If you couldn't handle the blood, you didn't belong in the game. I handled it, I cleaned it up, and something inside me went cold that day, something I'm not sure I ever got back. By the time I turned 18, I wasn't the scared kid from Watts anymore. I was Ice Blade, enforcer for the Rollin' 60s neighborhood Crips, and my reputation was growing. When problems needed solving, they called me. When examples needed to be made, they called me. When things got messy and needed to disappear, they called me. The code had become my Bible, the set had become my family, and the streets had become my kingdom. I thought I understood how the game worked. I thought I knew who I could trust. I was wrong about everything. 3 years deep in the game, and I thought I had it all figured out. I was making serious money, 20 grand a month moving product through South Central, Compton, and parts of Long Beach. I had respect on the streets, fear in the eyes of our enemies, and loyalty from the younger soldiers who looked up to me like I once looked up to Marcus. But the Crips weren't just a gang, they were a corporation built on violence. And like any business, there were politics, power struggles, and people willing to do anything to climb the ladder. The First crack in my understanding came when I learned about the alliances. Everyone thinks gang life is just Crips versus Bloods, us versus them, blue versus red. The reality was far more complicated and far more dangerous. Big Lock sat me down one evening in the back of a barbershop on Vermont Avenue, the kind of place that cut hair during the day and counted money after dark. The walls were covered with pictures of dead homies, young faces frozen in time, most of them killed before they reached 25. "Ice, you ready to learn how this really works?" he asked, lighting a Newport and letting the smoke curl around his weathered face. I nodded, thinking he was about to teach me about moving more weight or handling bigger territories. Instead, he pulled out a folder filled with photographs, police reports, and handwritten notes. "This is Detective Rodriguez from LAPD's gang unit," he said, sliding a photo across the table. "He's been on our payroll for 4 years. Feeds us information about raids, tells us when rivals are planning hits, makes evidence disappear when necessary." My blood went cold. "A cop? Working with us?" "This is Councilman Williams from District 8, he continued, showing me another photo. "Every month he gets an envelope with 10,000 cash. In return, he votes against funding for anti-gang programs and makes sure certain development projects don't happen in our neighborhoods." The photos kept coming. Judges, prosecutors, prison guards, even FBI. Informants who were actually working for us. The game wasn't just about controlling streets, it was about controlling the entire system. "The code you learned, Ice, that's for soldiers. This right here," he tapped the photos, "this is for generals. The real power isn't in the gun you carry, it's in knowing who to pay and who to pressure." That's when I understood why the Crips had survived so long, while other gangs fell apart. We weren't just criminals, we were part of the machine that ran Los Angeles, connected to legitimate power in ways that made us nearly untouchable. But power like that comes with complications. 2 weeks later, those complications almost got me killed. I was handling a routine collection from one of our dealers in Compton when 3 unmarked cars surrounded me. For a moment I thought it was a bust, until I saw the faces behind the badges. These weren't cops trying to arrest me. These were dirty cops trying to rob me. "Ice Blade, right?" said the lead detective, a white guy with cold eyes and expensive shoes. "I hear you're carrying our money." Our money, not LAPD money, their money. These weren't cops on Big Lock's payroll. These were freelancers, trying to muscle in on our territory through badge power. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. They wanted the 50,000 I was carrying, plus information about our operations, plus a monthly cut of everything moving through my corner. Standard shakedown, except they had guns, badges, and the backing of the legal system. I gave them the money, but not the information. Some lines you don't cross, even with a gun to your head. The code was clear: death before betrayal. But as they drove away with our cash, I realized something that changed everything. If dirty cops were branching out on their own, if the alliance system was breaking down, then the war was about to get a lot more complicated. I was right. Within a month, 3 of our safe houses got raided by unknown law enforcement. Rivals started hitting our spots with inside information they shouldn't have had. Product went missing from secured stash points. Money disappeared from collections. The Brotherhood was fracturing and everyone was a suspect. Big Lock called a meeting at the usual spot, an abandoned warehouse in Vernon where we handled serious business. 12 of us showed up, all veterans, all trusted soldiers who'd bled for the set. We'd grown up together, fought together, made money together. "We got rats," Big Lock said without preamble. "Someone in this room is feeding information to people who want to destroy us." The silence that followed was deadly. I looked around at faces I'd known for years, homies who'd watched my back in shootouts, who'd helped me bury bodies, who'd celebrated my victories and mourned my losses. One of them was a traitor. "Until we figure out who," Big Lock continued, "nobody trusts nobody. All operations are suspended. All alliances are terminated. We're going to war with everyone until we know who our real enemies are." That was the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about loyalty, brotherhood, and the code. Because when you can't trust your own blood, when your brothers become your enemies, when the system you've spent years building starts to collapse, that's when you learn what survival really means. And that's when the real killing started. The paranoia started small, like cancer. You don't notice it until it's already spreading through everything you thought was healthy. Big Lock's declaration that we had rats in the family changed the entire dynamic of the set. Suddenly, conversations stopped when certain people walked in rooms. Phone calls were whispered. Money counts were done with fewer witnesses. I found myself watching my own brothers the way I used to watch rival gang members, looking for tells, studying behavior patterns, trying to figure out who might be planning to put a bullet in my back. The first casualty was little Mike, barely 19 and eager to prove himself. He'd been asking too many questions about our police connections, showing up at spots where he wasn't supposed to be, and his spending habits didn't match his position in the hierarchy. When he rolled up to a family barbecue wearing a $5,000 chain nobody remembered him having money for, Big Lock made the call. They found little Mike's body in an alley behind a liquor store in Inglewood, 3 shots to the head, execution style. The message was clear: ask too many questions, live too large, and you become a problem that needs solving. But little Mike's death didn't stop the bleeding. It made it worse. 2 weeks later, it was Crazy D, one of our best enforcers. Word came down that he'd been spotted meeting with someone from the FBI task force targeting gang activity. Didn't matter that Crazy D swore on his mother's grave that the meeting was coincidental, that he was just trying to get information about his locked-up brother. Didn't matter that we'd been tight since childhood, that he'd saved my life in 2 separate shootouts. The code was absolute. Suspected cooperation meant death, no exceptions, no appeals. I was the one who got the order to handle it. "This is your test, Ice," Big Lock told me, handing me a .45 with a suppressor already attached. "Crazy D was your boy, your partner. If you can do this, I know your loyalty is absolute. If you can't..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I found Crazy D at his baby mama's apartment in Carson, playing video games with his 6-year-old son. Normal domestic scene. Dad time, laughter, the smell of dinner cooking in the kitchen. For a moment, I almost walked away. This was my friend, my brother, someone I'd shared foxholes with in the war for the streets. But the code was bigger than friendship, bigger than love, bigger than the screaming voice in my head telling me this was wrong. "D, we need to talk," I said, keeping my voice steady. He must have seen something in my eyes because his whole body tensed. His son kept playing, oblivious to the tension crackling between us like electricity before a storm. "Ice, whatever you heard, it ain't true," he said quietly, walking toward the back bedroom where his son couldn't hear us. "You know me, brother, you know I would never..." I followed him into the bedroom and closed the door. "I know," I said, pulling out the gun. "But it doesn't matter what I know. It matters what they think." The look in his eyes when he saw the weapon, that mixture of betrayal, fear, and understanding, still haunts me. He knew the code as well as I did. He knew why I was there. He knew there was no talking my way out of this, no appeal to friendship or history that would change what had to happen. "My son," he whispered, "don't let him see." Those were his last words. I put 2 bullets in his chest and 1 in his head, professional and clean. Then I walked back through the living room where his son was still playing video games, stepped over the toys scattered on the floor, and left through the front door like I was just another visitor saying goodbye. That night, I threw up until my stomach was empty, then kept retching until nothing came up but bile and regret. But I didn't cry. Couldn't afford to. Soldiers don't cry over necessary kills, even when the necessary kills are your best friends. The paranoia got worse after that. Big Lock started requiring lie detector tests for major operations. Conversations were recorded and analyzed. New recruits were subjected to background investigations that would make the FBI proud. The Brotherhood became a police state, and I was one of the enforcers keeping it running. But the real shock came when I learned who the actual rat was. It was Marcus, my cousin, the one who'd recruited me, the one who'd been like an older brother when my real father disappeared into the system. Marcus had been feeding information to a joint Dahala PD task force for 18 months, trading details about our operations for reduced sentences on federal charges he'd been secretly facing. The betrayal cut deeper than any bullet ever could. Big Lock gave me the folder with all the evidence. Recorded phone calls, copies of reports Marcus had filed, even surveillance photos of him meeting with federal agents at restaurants in neighborhoods far from our territory. The documentation was thorough, professional, and absolutely damning. "This one's personal for you," Big Lock said, studying my face for reaction. "You brought him up, he's your blood, that makes this your responsibility." I stared at the photos of Marcus shaking hands with suits, smiling like he was enjoying himself, and felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart. That had gone cold years ago. Something deeper. The last piece of the person I used to be before the streets claimed me. When? I asked. Tonight. His usual spot on Figueroa. Make it public. Send a message about what happens to family members who betray family. I took the folder and walked out into the Los Angeles night, carrying the weight of what I had to do. The code demanded blood payment for betrayal, and blood was always paid in full, even when it came from your own veins. Especially when it came from your own veins, because that's when you learn the hardest lesson of all about gang life. In the end, there is no family. There is no loyalty. There is no brotherhood. There's only the code. And the code is written in blood that never washes clean. Marcus was waiting for me at the 24-hour diner on Figueroa, the same place where he used to take me for late-night meals when I was a kid and my mother was working the graveyard shift. He looked older than his 32 years, grey creeping into his hair, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when this all started. The weight of betrayal ages you fast. He saw me coming through the parking lot and didn't run, didn't even look surprised. Maybe he'd been expecting this moment since the first time he picked up that phone to call his federal handler. Maybe he'd known, deep down, that the code always collects its debts. Little cuz, he said, as I slid into the booth across from him. His coffee was cold, untouched. His hands were shaking slightly, fear, withdrawal, or just the weight of knowing what was about to happen. Don't, I said, cutting him off before he could start explaining, justifying, begging. Just, don't? But he talked anyway. They always do. Ice, you don't understand the position I was in. They had me on federal conspiracy charges, life without parole, life. They had recordings, surveillance, evidence going back 3 years. They were going to bury me so deep I'd never see daylight again. I listened without responding, studying his face, looking for the cousin who used to sneak me extra Christmas presents, who taught me how to throw a curveball, who held my mother when she cried at my father's funeral. He wasn't there anymore. So you gave them us instead, I said finally. I gave them enough to stay out of prison. Just enough. I never gave them anything that would get anyone killed. Little Mike is dead. Crazy D is dead. How many others, Marcus? How many funerals did your cooperation buy you? His face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to go like that. I was trying to protect the family, trying to find a way for all of us to survive this, by destroying it from the inside. The diner was nearly empty. Just us, a waitress reading a magazine, and an old man nursing a cup of coffee at the counter. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that they were about to witness the enforcement of the only law that really mattered on these streets. I reached into my jacket and felt the grip of the .45. One shot to the head, quick and clean. Marcus would be dead before he hit the floor, and another chapter in the endless cycle of betrayal and retribution would be closed. But as I looked at his face, really looked at it, something stopped me. Maybe it was seeing my own reflection in his eyes. Maybe it was remembering the kid I used to be before the code rewrote my soul. Maybe it was just exhaustion from carrying so much death, so much blood, so much loyalty to a system that demanded everything and gave back nothing but paranoia and graves. I can't do this anymore, I heard myself saying. Marcus looked confused. What? I can't do this anymore. Any of it. The code, the killing, the brotherhood built on bodies. I'm done. It was the first time in years I'd spoken words that weren't calculated, weren't tactical, weren't designed to maintain my position or protect my interests. They were just true. Ice, what are you saying? I'm saying you were right about one thing. This life doesn't have a happy ending. We're all going to prison or the graveyard, and everyone we love is going to get pulled down with us. I stood up from the booth, leaving the gun. In my jacket. You want to know what the real code is, Marcus? It's not loyalty or brotherhood or blood in, blood out. The real code is that this life consumes everything it touches. Family, friends, love, hope. It eats it all and asks for more. Where are you going? Away from this. Away from all of it. I walked out of that diner and never looked back. The next 48 hours were the most dangerous of my life. You don't just quit the Crips. You don't just walk away from the code. Blood in, blood out. Those aren't just words, they're a promise. I knew Big Lock would send someone after me, probably multiple someones. I knew they'd check my usual spots, lean on my remaining family, turned the entire organization into a hunting party with me as the target. But I also knew something they didn't. After years of handling their security, their safe houses, their escape routes, I knew every weakness in their system. I'd helped build the cage, which meant I knew how to slip through the bars. I liquidated everything I could quickly. Cash from my stash spots, jewelry I could sell, even my car, which was too recognizable to keep. Within 6 hours of leaving that diner, Iceblade was dead. The person I used to be before the streets claimed me was trying to crawl back to life. It took me 3 years to get clean, really clean. Not just off the streets, but out of the mindset, out of the paranoia, out of the cold calculation that had replaced my conscience. 3 years of looking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows, expecting every knock on the door to be my former brothers coming to collect the debt I owed for walking away. They never came. Maybe Big Lock decided I wasn't worth the resources. Maybe the organization had bigger problems to worry about. Or maybe after everything that happened, he understood why I left and chose to let sleeping dogs lie. I found out later that Marcus disappeared 2 days after our meeting. Never found a body. Never got confirmation of what happened. But in that world, disappearing is usually a permanent condition. I still don't know if his federal handlers relocated him or if someone else from the set finished what I couldn't bring myself to do. I try not to think about it. These days, I work construction in Phoenix. Hard labor, honest pay, sleep that isn't interrupted by nightmares about dead friends and broken codes. I've got a small apartment, a truck that's paid for, and a life that doesn't require looking over my shoulder. Every time I walk to the store, sometimes late at night when the city is quiet, I think about the streets I used to run, about Big Lock and whether he's still alive, about the young soldiers who took my place, carrying guns and codes they think will protect them, about the cycle that keeps spinning, consuming new generations of kids who think they understand what they're getting into. They don't. None of us did. The code promises brotherhood, but delivers betrayal. It promises respect, but gives you fear. It promises power, but traps you in a cage made of violence and paranoia. And the price, the real price, isn't just your life or your freedom. It's your soul. The streets of Los Angeles are still there, still calling to desperate kids who think gang life will save them from poverty, neglect, hopelessness. The Crips are still recruiting, still killing, still enforcing codes that demand blood payment for imagined slights. But Iceblade is gone, buried in a graveyard of memories I try not to visit. And the kid I used to be, the one who just wanted to help his mama pay the bills and maybe have something better than what we had, is trying to learn how to live again. Some days are better than others, but I'm still here, still breathing, still human. And that's more than most soldiers of the code can say.